Hello, this is S.K. Williams, and today I would like to talk to you about the 2020 United States election. More importantly, I would like to talk about the ramifications of that election. You see, we are in a no-win scenario. It's something a Star Trek fan may call a Kobayashi Maru situation. I don't necessarily think that the most dramatic outcome is the most likely, although you do hear people discussing it, especially in social media. The concept of America entering another civil war, and violence breaking out, and there being an actual literal war being fought. I don't believe that will be the case. Most people aren't driven towards a violent extremism. Even if they feel cheated in the election, they will more than likely simply spend their time being critical. However, that isn't to say that the outcome of the election can't have deleterious effects on the American society. It just means that these effects will likely be, well, more subtle. What do I mean? Well, as it stands right now, Joe Biden has won 290 electoral votes and has won the largest share of the popular vote any presidential candidate has ever won in U.S. history. This is in spite of the fact that he is the least supported candidate in U.S. history, gaining the least amount of overall enthusiasm from his base and generating the least amount of enthusiasm in his campaign. No one seemed all that excited about Joe Biden, and yet he not only won, but he won in a historically large way, winning not only the electoral votes, which isn't all that shocking, but also the popular vote. Those who support President Trump and President Trump himself, however, have alleged that voter fraud has been rampant in this election. And many have posted videos showing people carting in what looks like ballots after the polls had already closed, pulling them in with wagons, or bringing them in with suitcases or briefcases or large, oversized bags. And we have video of election workers burning mail-in ballots for Donald Trump. Likewise, there are allegations that the voting machines themselves are easy to hack or to rig and to change the outcome of an election. And therein lies the problem. America's society has always been very polarized, and we live in a period where that polarization is very sharp indeed, to the point where the liberals and conservatives not only don't have an understanding on how they view things, but have grown unable to bridge that gap and make any sort of compromise. But what's more, the polarization has gotten to the point where, in everyday American society, there is active hostility and active distrust, almost as if the people who hold differing political views simply cannot reconcile them to live in a single society. What's more, and this is perhaps most alarming for our situation, they have also taken to such extreme demonization that people have begun to actively believe the propagandistic claims about how awful the other party really is. Which brings about the problem that I'm seeing now. It doesn't really matter which of the candidates is sworn in on the 20th of January 2020. We are going to have a social and possible constitutional crisis, regardless of if it is Joe Biden or Donald Trump. If Joe Biden is sworn in, those who supported Trump will insist that he is an illegitimate president who stole the election through illegal means. And unlike when they made similar claims about Obama, this will be done not just as a way of venting or rationalizing how the person they don't like got in and having a reason to dislike him, more than just his personality or his policies. People do this quite often. If they don't support a candidate, they will often gravitate toward a narrative that makes said candidate in some way illegitimate, to further emphasize that their side truly represents the will of the people, and this is an impostor who is wrong. But most of the time, I think deep down, people realize that these claims are not accurate. They are simply there to help you vent emotionally. But when it comes to Biden, they won't simply be saying he stole the election and that it was rigged as a way of rationalizing their contempt, or to fit him in a narrative of an illegitimate president to justify their hatred. Rather, it will be something that is honestly believed. But should Donald Trump turn out to be right, and after a recount and investigations they discover that he was the true winner of the election, and he is sworn in, those on the left will use that as evidence that he is indeed a fascist dictator, and they will use that to show how he is just like a certain Austrian politician was when he took over the greater tribes of Germania. Forgive the more cryptic and historical framing. Censoriousness is the bane of our time. Nevertheless, they already see him in these terms, and should Trump gain a second term, he will be seen as a tyrant, as a dictator. He will be seen as fulfilling his role that they've already assigned him as a Nazi, as a follower of a certain mustachioed Austrian's ideas. He will not be the true president, of course. Rather, Biden clearly won. He won both the electorals and popular vote. Joe Biden has a clear Democratic mandate. The American people hate Donald Trump. They realize how evil he was. They rejected him. And then Donald Trump refused to step down and illegally remained president. This won't just be idle talk. They will literally see that. And currently the left is already gearing up for a revolution by tearing down statues and burning down buildings, and there was even a story about a man who was shot for wearing a MAGA hat because Nazis can't be accepted. I'm not saying there will definitely be a civil war, but I am saying there will be more riots if Trump wins. If Donald Trump takes the election as it stands right now, they will say that Biden won the election clearly, that Biden had the majority of electoral and popular votes, and that Donald Trump illegally stole the election from him, and this will prove that he is a dictator that needs to be rejected, he has no legal authority, and it will lead to civil unrest. But if Biden gets it, the same thing will happen. And what's interesting about this is the news media has already announced that Biden is the winner, and they are praising how wonderful he is, and how he's calling for unity of Americans. Something they never did with Trump, whom instead they focused on him dividing America, and how racists loved him, and how Donald Trump was obviously going to bring about ruin. They hated Trump 4 years ago, and they still hate him. The media, if Trump were to win, will double down on those efforts and lionize those who resist, which, incidentally, is another reason conservatives are less likely to turn rebel, because they're not being supported by the media. And this constant reinforcement that it's okay to work violence to resist the dictator in the White House, it is there. Regardless of who wins the election, a sizable portion of the population will view them as illegitimate and illegal, and will simply not obey him. It will lead to civil unrest. Although the left is far more likely to turn to violence than the right, in part because of the mentality inherent in the left, but also in part because the media justifies the violence the left does, and has been reinforcing it for years now, which is why they feel confident in doing it, and in fact have been instructed to do this in a way. What is most interesting also, though, is there have been articles on how this election is undermining people's faith in democracy, although the media clearly favors Biden and have already declared him the victor. Rather, these articles are written claiming that Trump's refusal to concede damages democracy because it undermines people's faith in the system. They claim that Trump is undermining the faith in democracy by telling people that the system is corrupt and getting them to not trust it. Thus, Trump is once again showing what kind of an evil, awful, self-centered person he is, and naturally this leads to the undermining of democracy, because now people will not trust the electoral system. If Donald Trump would just do the right thing and concede the election, naturally the situation would be resolved and people would still have their precious faith in democracy. The problem with this, of course, is that it reveals the true nature of their complaint. They aren't really concerned with who really won. They are interested in preserving people's faith in democracy. That's not to say that they don't care who won. I do believe the people who are saying this care deeply who won, and much more importantly, care deeply that Donald Trump lost. But at the same time, the way they're framing it, Donald Trump should concede the election to preserve people's faith in democracy. A faith that will be shattered at this point, even if he did concede. People would just assume he gave up. They may be disappointed in him. Maybe they'll think he was threatened. Maybe they think he just doesn't think he can win. But the deed is done, and the simple reality is people will have already lost faith in democracy before Trump conceded. It is already accomplished. The only way to preserve the people's faith in democracy who supported Donald Trump would be if Donald Trump takes office on the 20th of January, 2021. But should Donald Trump be granted a second term, you will have utterly destroyed the faith in democracy of those who voted for Biden. Either way you go, you will have destroyed or at least greatly damaged people's faith in democracy and the democratic system. But what's even more problematic than this is that even Trump supporters will no longer be trusting of the democratic system fully, even should Trump get a second term, since they saw how easy it is to cheat and how the media will cover you're cheating up. Meanwhile, if Biden gets in, the same problem occurs. There is no way out of this situation. People's faith in democracy is already damaged. Mine isn't, though. My faith in democracy has remained the same. The reason for this is because I never had faith in democracy to begin with. I am a monarchist. People today don't understand what monarchism is, though. People today think of monarchy as dictatorship. It's like how the Great Reset is often framed as neo-feudalism, feudalism of course being evil and we're all slaves to kings and lords. I don't believe in dictatorship or absolute rule, though. However, I do think that the head of state is an important enough position that it should not be an elected one, since elections can easily be rigged. I believe that having a system of an appointed or hereditary ruler is indeed better. Not because I think it's good that one man should have absolute power, because ultimately you don't have to give absolute power to the monarch. Neither do you have to do the other extreme where the monarch has no power and is simply a symbolic figurehead. The monarch can have just as much power as the president currently has, while at the same time having just as many limitations. You need not have a system in which the king has absolute unlimited power. You could make reasonable limits, while at the same time still giving him real power. There are many benefits that I see to monarchy, but I'm not going to discuss all of them here. I'm just getting a few of the more common objections out of the way. The only advantage I wish to discuss now, though, in light of the election, is that in a hereditary monarchy it is fairly easy to determine who someone's son is, even one that allows adoption or one that perhaps had an unfortunate incident with illegitimacy and adultery would still have been raised in that family, and ultimately, while there can be crises on who is and is not king, especially if the line is broken and you must go to another branch, this would happen far more rarely than a contested election, and in the end you really can't pull off the sort of fraud that you can in an election. Voter fraud and the massive social division that comes with an election inherently are both very prominent this year, and reveal why I'm not particularly fond of electoral systems, at least for the head of state. I'm perfectly happy with houses of parliament having elected officials, but not the head of state. We don't have anyone we can all rally behind, because he is a party politician representing a specific interest, and if you don't share those interests, well, he simply does not represent you. People talk about rallying behind who won, regardless of the party, and how the president is president of all Americans, but in a very real sense he is not, and he doesn't care as much about those who won't vote for him and secure his power, or the power of his political party, or the passage of a specific agenda. Kings, on the other hand, reign through tradition, and it maintains a certain level of stability to society, as well as giving everyone a common frame of reference. I intend on discussing this at a greater length in another video, but for now I'm simply laying it out there. This video is, after all, predominantly about the outcome of the 2020 election and how either way it goes from this point on, a crisis has been established. And it is this crisis that will make 2021 one of the most problematic years for the United States political scene. I personally think Joe Biden will in fact be sworn in as president on the 20th of January 2021. I think that his victory will be upheld, and I think it was foreordained even before Election Day began, but what really matters is that it doesn't matter. What really matters is, it seems that we are in for a rough ride ahead. I may do one or two more of such videos, set to a slideshow format. I apologize for that. I have to rush these things together. Having said all that, though, I would like to close on this. We should never put our faith in man, but in God. That is always the wisest of courses. And always know that no matter how bad things are now, now is not forever, and God is always in control. I shall take my leave of you now. Thank you. God bless, and goodbye.